Hey guys, Francis here. And I was wondering, do you ever wonder yourself about some of the basics of Pilates? I mean, you go through the movements in class and you just go and flow. And what about the details and the why behind some of the things? So I thought we would break down a little bit of the why behind the stability and mobility that we're looking for in leg circles. Okay, so here we go. We're going to just talk about a little bit of the basic alignment in the pelvis. So if you have your pelvis, right, you can start with your hands on your hips, and we do pelvic rocks. Low back can press into the floor, and low back can arch, right? So there's a little space between your low back and the floor. Low back presses, and low back arches. So if we do that a couple of times, we can come somewhere around to the middle. So there's a little bit of space between your low back and the floor, and we're going to stabilize there. So we're going to find a nice stability in the torso. That's number one. And number two, we're going to find a mobility at the hip socket. So in Pilates, that's called hip differentiation. The same focus can be true for the shoulders as well, but we're talking about the leg circle series, so we'll focus on the hips. So we do a few pelvic rocks, low back presses and arches. We find roughly the middle. Now, if you relax your back muscles completely, but don't lose your alignment, we're in a good place to start. We do 3 focuses for deep core stability. Number 1, the muscles between the sitting bones, the pubic bone, and the tailbone. Diamond-shaped group of muscles at the base of the torso, pulling in and up toward your head, like a Kegel exercise if you're familiar with those. So pelvic floor number 1, or like you had to use the restroom, but you got to hold it. Pelvic floor is number 1. Number 2 is transverse abdominals, skinny middle. So think of wearing a weight belt that you're tightening with your own muscles. So that's number 2. And you're not going to push your low back into the floor for this. Okay, so pelvic floor 1, skinny middle 2, long spine 3. So energize tall through your torso, and the deep spinal muscles, the little ones that go all up and down your spine, are engaged. This is really great for support, right? It keeps keeps everything kind of nice and supported there. So pelvic floor, skinny middle, long spine. So that's our stability. I like to think of like a superhero energy in the torso. I call it our Pilates body. So Pilates body active. So that's part 1. Number 2 is going to be mobilizing the hip socket. So let's lengthen the right leg up and laterally rotate the thigh bone from the hip socket. We cross the midline and we circle and then we pause. So as we do this, we'll do a couple more. I want you to notice what's happening in the body. What we don't want is for the pelvis to rock from side to side. And then let's reverse the direction, moving to the right. You can visualize your sacrum. That's the triangular bone at the base of your spine, right? As it's grounded into the floor. So as you're moving, you're not going to feel it move around. I like to use the imagery of a rubber stamp. So if you had a rubber stamp that you were pushing onto a piece of paper with ink, right? Imagine that your sacrum is like that triangle-shaped rubber stamp. Now, which part of the rubber stamp is touching the paper? Is it the wide part that's closer toward your waist, or is it the tip that's closer toward your tail, right? So you want to figure out what part of your rubber stamp is grounding and connecting as we're in our neutral, right? Not the whole low back, which is a different focus. Now, we'll do another exercise here. We'll flex the foot. And as you move here, you're going to keep, again, that same placement of the rubber stamp in place as we point the leg up and flex the foot down, right? As we point up and flex down. The tendency might be for you to want to tuck the tail as the leg lifts, but you don't want to do that. You want to stabilize the torso, feel your active Pilates body, and mobilize, move freely at the hip socket. Let's do a couple more like this. Let's do 2 more. And now we're going to make this a little more challenging. So we'll go back to the first exercise, the leg circles. And when you did those leg circles, with the bottom leg bent, it's easier to stabilize. Now we'll make it a little more challenging. If you need more challenge, lengthen the bottom leg. And you want no rocking side to side in the hip. So energize your leg, use your Pilates body, laterally rotate that thigh bone, and circle and pause, and circle and pause, and circle and pause. Breathing and pause. 2 more. 1 more. Here we go. Now reverse it and pause, and pause again, and pause. And no rocking. Really notice if you feel in your awareness that you're moving in that sacrum, but you also have to remember release that hip socket. Let's do the same thing second side. So knees bent, feet on the floor, roughly in the middle. Relax for a second. Make sure you're not gripping in your back. And then pelvic floor, skinny middle, long spine. And then left leg up, laterally rotate, and circle 6 times. Okay? And this is all about stability in the torso, mobility at the hip socket. That's it, guys. Good. Now reverse direction. Here we go. Now try to squeeze your knee really, really straight. Okay, now parallel. Let's reach, and here we go. Point it up. Now, if you're not sure on this leg kick, on this battement, if you're doing that pelvic rock, if you lengthen the bottom leg, as you do it, it will keep the pelvis more fixed, right? It's connected to the thigh. It also will probably be harder to lift that top leg. Okay, and then let's go ahead and from here, do the leg circles again. So find your placement, left leg up, and then with the bottom leg longer. In leg circles, it's actually harder to stabilize. So 2 different actions, like with the bottom leg stabilizing in leg circles, and it's harder to stabilize with the bottom leg long in leg circles. Breathing. Let's do 2 more like that. Okay. So a couple of things to keep in mind as we're moving through our Pilates practice, breaking down the details of what happens in our leg circles and how we focus on stability of the torso. Meanwhile, mobilization at the joint, at the hip socket in this case. So hip differentiation. So I hope this has been helpful. Please make sure if you enjoy this information to subscribe down below so that you can get more information to help you with your body and so that you can move and breathe and feel just freer and easier in your day. Hope you have a great day and take care. Thanks so much. Bye.